Thank you.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Our final talk of the session is Francisco Perez Arce, who is an economist also within CIPHER. His research focuses on the relationship between economics and public policy in a range of settings, and his paper will be on the impact of the pandemic on subjective work probabilities at older ages. Pancho?
Right, thank you very much. So I'm presenting work with Marco and Ari on the impact of the pandemic on subjective work probabilities at older ages. So what we do is in this work is we analyze responses to questions on subjective probability of working at older ages. And what we find is that respondents answering the survey after the pandemic started report a lower subjective probability of working at older ages. So people, after the pandemic, people are thinking that it's less likely that they're gonna be working at older ages. We also look a little bit on mechanisms, and what we find is that this effect is driven by respondents who do not work from home. So we use data from a bunch of several UAS projects and we merge them together. The main one is the Health and Retirement Survey instrument, which is a bi-yearly instrument. And the main wave that we use is one that's fielded between September of 2019 and September of 21. Though we've recently merged in data from a new wave that's ongoing, still not too many observations, but I'll talk a little bit about it. And we merged it with data from the coronavirus tracker project, because we use it to track people who had different employment experiences throughout the pandemic. And then we also merge it with the survey on work from home preferences that Marco just presented, and the Financial and Health Network survey to look at changes in financial settings. So the main data is from, which is a work on work probabilities at older ages, which is asked in the Health and Retirement Study Survey. These surveys are asked every 2 years to all of the UAS respondents. But the interesting thing here is that the way that it works is that when a respondent joins the panel, when an individual joins the UAS panel, they're asked to answer the HRS survey. And then after they finish, 2 years later, they're going to be asked to answer the next round of the survey. So this kind of creates some distribution in the timing of when people are going to be answering the survey. So throughout the bi-yearly periods, we get quite a, not continuous quite, but like roughly continuous responses. So we're going to just use this timing and look at the people who responded before and after the pandemic. And as I said, we also are just merging in the new round of HRS data, which also allows us to look at within individual changes in the respondents about future work probabilities. So this is the question that we use. These are the questions that we use. The respondents are asked, thinking about work in general and not just your present job, what do you think the chances are that you will be working full-time after you reach age 62? There's also a question that asks, what are the chances that you will be doing any work for pay after you reach age 62? So including part-time possibilities. And then these questions are also asked for ages 65 and age 70. So these are going to be our outcome variables. And we're going to look at the timing on when someone answered the survey and their answers to these questions. So here in this graph, I'm just breaking the sample on 4-month periods. So you've got people who answered the survey 5 to 9 months before the pandemic. Here I'm using just April 1 as the cutoff. People who answered it 0 to 4 months before the pandemic, 0 to 4 months after the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. And what you see here is that people who are responding to the survey in the pandemic are giving lower probabilities of working in older ages. Here I'm showing you for P62, for probability of working at age 62, but you can see the same thing, a similar pattern for age 65, for age 65 at least part-time, age 70, etc. So from now on, I'm just going to concentrate on regressions on the post-dummy. So here I'm just looking at the effect of the outcome variables on whether you answered the survey before or after the pandemic. And looking at each of these 6 outcome variables, you see that on average, depending on the age exactly, but there's a little bit of variation, but around 3 percentage points less likely to work at the older age if you answer the survey after the pandemic. So now we start breaking down the results for different subgroups. So here I'm breaking it down for people who were working or not working at the time of the survey. The effect is, if anything, stronger for people who were working. So this is not driven by people who became unemployed or were not working at the time. So it's people who are working who are less likely, who are saying that they're less likely to work at an older age. Here I'm breaking it down by people who lost a job at some point during the pandemic. So here merging in the coronavirus data. And what you find is that, even within people who kept their job, who didn't lose their job at any point in the pandemic, you still see this strong effect, in fact, a stronger effect for them. And then the result is, you find a similar thing when using the within individual changes in probability of working. So here, people who answered the new round of the HRS, people who answered the survey after October of 2021 or January or February of this year, comparing their answers to what they answered 2 years ago at the end of 2019 or early 2020. And you still see that these same people are giving a lower probability of working till an older age. So it's consistent to that. And then what we do after this is trying to figure out what are the mechanisms, right? What is happening? Why are people thinking that they're less likely to be working at an older age? And so I'm not going to be able to show you the result because it's a 10-minute presentation, but I'll give you a little bit of a hint of what we did and what we found. So we posited 3 general hypotheses. One is that it's about work experiences among those who cannot work from home, right? The story is about unruly customers or having to wear masks in schools or things like that. Another hypothesis was the improved financial situation for some people, right? So we know that a lot of people saved quite a bit during the pandemic because of government programs or because they spent less at the beginning of the pandemic or whichever. So we thought that maybe people who saved more thought they were going to be more likely to be able to retire earlier. And then the third hypothesis was just declining job prospects. People, maybe not that people don't want to work at an older age, but maybe the people are just realizing how uncertain the job market is. They're kind of realizing that they can lose their job at some point. So they're thinking maybe it's less likely that it's more likely that they will lose their job when they're older or something like that. So we find evidence that in favor of the first hypothesis and against the 2 final hypotheses. So for work from home, we looked at a couple of things. First is just look at job satisfaction and change in job satisfaction and the relationship with being able to work from home. And so what we find is that people who were able to work from home didn't see a drop in job satisfaction, but people who were not able to work from home are reporting lower job satisfaction than before the pandemic. But also we find that just basically the same regressions results that I sent, that I showed you before, but interacted with the ability of working from home. You see a very strong interaction between working from home and answering after the pandemic. So the effect is, so people who were able to work from home are seeing very much smaller or no decreases in their probability of working at older ages. The effect is concentrated among those who cannot work from home. And this survives interaction of POSE with some of the other correlates of working from home. So things like education, income, wealth, etc. So it's not that just more in general, more educated people and income people with higher earnings are the ones who are not seeing the drop in subjective probabilities. It seems that it's specifically those who are not able to work from home. On the other hand, we didn't see this interaction between improved financial situation and answering after the pandemic, nor we also have a measure from the coronavirus data on probability of keeping your job. And so we don't see an interaction between these measures and being after the pandemic in the regression models. So in general conclusion, the subjective probability of working past 60 to 65 or 70 appears to have fallen. And this effect is concentrating among those who cannot work from home. So one possible explanation is that those who cannot work from home are lacking their job less after the pandemic, and that's driving them the lower intentions of working at higher ages. Right. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. Questions for Pancho? Kathleen.
So yeah, this is super interesting. It seems like the timing of the survey is like very critical here. And I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about what drives the variation in timing. Are the invitations actually going out in this staggered way, or is it like people kind of waiting to answer?
So in principle, both, right? But yeah, so the main thing here is the invitations. So you're invited to answer the survey approximately 2 years after you answered the previous survey. Or if you are just joining the panel, then you're invited pretty much right away after as you join the panel. So this is, of course, people can wait a little bit or can wait more or less to answer the survey because the invitations will stay there for a while. So there is a little bit of a personal decision on when you answer the survey. So one thing that we can do to kind of to solve this concern is to look at this kind of instrument your actual date of answering the survey with the date that you answered the previous survey, right? Because the date when you answered the 2017 round is definitely not going to be related with your pandemic response or something like that. So that could be an option, but honestly, I'm not really worried because most of the variation is driven by the invitation.
I guess did you look for balance though in this, like on observable characteristics? And I guess one worry would be that even like, you know, your past behavior could mean that like you're frantically busy or something like that, and so you wait a long time to answer the survey, you know, even in the past, and that's correlated with your current situation. So it's not the pandemic per se, but it's sort of personal characteristics that could be.
Yeah, it could be. So I haven't looked at balances that we should definitely include that. But what I can tell you is that, you know, like if you put the like controls for many things, it just changes nothing, the other things, because, you know, it's true that that you can, some people wait more than less, but, you know, this is 4 years ago, 2 years, you know, it kind of evens out. The other thing is, I mean, starting to look at the changes, right, within individual changes in the responses, and you see kind of the same thing. So people, I mean, right now we're just 5 months on the new wave, so we just have like 1,000 observations or so. But just looking at them, you know, within them, you see that the response they gave in the previous round, which was pretty much before the, you know, slightly before the pandemic, and their current round, you see this drop in within individual responses. So yeah, I mean, we could create some instruments with like the time of when you join the panel. That would be I think
Just a quick remark that pretty much 95% of the invitees answer a survey within a month. So that is not, because we have reminders in place, and pretty much almost everybody who eventually answered the survey does so within a month. Now, it's true that a month can make a difference if you end up answering the follow-up in March 2020 or in February 2020, but I don't think that these are a lot of people.
Yeah, I think this is a very important concern if you're thinking, like, when you're doing things like days, you know, like if you're looking at If we were doing like an RD thing, like right before or right after the pandemic, that would be much more concerning. But here we're really looking up at months after the pandemic then. But it's a good point.
Okay, I see we have a couple of questions from folks who are also within CIPHER, but we are at time now. So to keep us on time, I figure you folks can talk to each other pretty easily. I'm gonna end the session here. It looks as if we have a 15-minute break before reconvening for session 8. So
Yep.
I'd like to thank the panel and everybody else. And we'll see you in a little bit.
Thanks, Andy. So please, yes, be back at 12:30 Eastern time. So grab some lunch, dinner, breakfast, whatever, and we'll see you back for session 8.